Welcome to The Buzz. I'm Christopher Conover. Arizona's 2022 primary elections are in the books. This week we break down Tuesday's elections and look ahead to November. While results are not yet certified and some counting is continuing, returns from Tuesday's election have given us a pretty clear idea of who will be on the November midterm ballot. To help us break down recent events, we invited Dylan Smith, the editor and publisher of the Tucson Sentinel, and Dan Shearer, the editor of the Green Valley News and Sahuarita Sun, to sit down with us. I started by asking Dan about the big picture from the results.
Well, I'm not so sure that this is a bellwether on whether this is Trump country or not. Obviously, there was some success there, but we really have to wait to the general to see if those candidates get all the way through. I think what was interesting was that Rusty Bowers lost his bid for a state Senate seat after his January 6th hearing testimony, and that was an interesting move. I thought that said almost as much as the Trump-endorsed candidates prevailing in the primary.
Dylan, what was your big takeaway on all of this?
There are really two ways to look at the success of the Trump-endorsed MAGA candidates in all of these primaries. One is obviously that Donald Trump and his cadre still have a pretty tight grip on a large portion of the Republican base. Some of these races were not very close. Of course, the governor's race it basically couldn't be tighter, but a lot of these primaries were, not terribly close. Yet there were some pretty good performances sprinkled throughout from the folks who were not endorsed by Donald Trump, and still did pretty well in some of these GOP primaries, not just endorsed, but not, completely aligned with him. So there are Republicans out there who are not completely bought into Trumpism right now, which maybe gives us something to think about how well Trump and his, candidates, his movement, I guess you could say, will play come the November general election, when it's not just the hardcore Republicans voting in a primary who are casting ballots.
It was also a bad night for a lot of incumbents. Dan, you mentioned Rusty Bowers. Mark Brnovich will be gone. Vince Leach from the legislature lost in a primary. He's been there a long time. Not the best night necessarily for those who are currently in office.
We should point out that 70% of registered voters did not go to the polls. I know it's a midterm. I know it's a primary. We expect that low result. I'm hoping that what has rolled out this past week with the election results will encourage more people to study up and get out to the polls for the general. We'll see whether that happens or not. But yeah, we did see a few incumbents go down. Then we had people like Daniel Hernandez, who was running for Congress, and he, of course, was stepping out of the state legislature role and into hope to go to that next level. And he not only lost, but he got thrashed by Kirsten Engel in CD6 for the Democratic nomination there. She will go up against Juan Ciscomani. So Daniel has fed at the public trough for 10 years. He'll be back, I'm sure, in one form or another. But I was surprised at how soundly he lost.
I think a lot of us were expecting that Democratic primary to be rather closer than it turned out to be. And that race, that CD6 general election race, I think will be pretty closely watched around the country. That has long been a swing district in southeastern Arizona. With redistricting, that's a little bit more of a Republican-leaning district, but not by much. And there are a ton of independent voters in that district who will really be the key. That and just, in general, turnout, who gets to turn out their base.
Well, and that district, as you said, Dylan, it's long been a swing district when it was CD8, CD2, now CD6. That district has forever been that almost 30-30-30 split between Republicans, Democrats, and no party voters, and it moves around. Right now it's more Republican.
Well, we've seen that come down to just a couple hundred votes for a general election sometimes.
And it's not going to be that close this time as far as the voter registration goes, but I think being an open seat, everybody wants it. It's going to be really a race to watch.
We have two candidates in there, Juan Ciscomani, Kirsten Engel. They're both from Tucson. Sure, there are a lot of votes in Tucson, but that district now, Cochise County, goes up even north into Graham and Greenlee County. How well do Tucsonans play?
That's a great question because it actually touches parts of, I believe, 5 counties, that new congressional district. And that really says a lot. You know, you get up into Pinal where they can be more conservative. Graham, Greenlee. Graham is more conservative. Greenlee is not so much. But you have that Sierra Vista area that has supported Republicans in the state legislature for a good long time. And then we have a lot of left-leaning voters down here in Green Valley who have now been drawn into that district, and they will play a role in this also. And they're not happy about being in that district, quite frankly. They would have rather been in Raul Grijalva's district, which is where the other half of the community has gone. So this will be a very interesting one to watch. I think whoever grabs this seat, though, will probably hang on to it for a while.
Let's talk about money. We know CD6 is going to get a ton of money poured into it because it always does. It's also an open seat with Ann Kirkpatrick retiring. Can money buy a win there? We did see in the legislative primary here in Pima County, Morgan Abraham, lots of outside money came in and he lost. So it's money going to buy wins this time around?
I think in some respects, having too much money, especially outside money, that's not coming through your campaign, people aren't donating to you to support you, can be a little bit of a drawback. Some people look at that a little bit suspiciously. If you are getting a whole lot of outside help, they're wondering why. For a primary voter, that's a different calculation. Versus chasing after the general election vote. Money certainly is a factor, making your name omnipresent, whether it's advertising or mailers or endless emails sent to every address you get hold of. That can play a role, but still. I still hope most people are trying to be informed voters and thinking about who they're casting their ballot for, educating themselves. I know I'm a little naive in all of this, but but especially up towards the top of the ticket, and you've got Senate, a governor, some of these top state races, Congress. These things are up at the top of the ticket. They're not down in the weeds where you're trying to make the choice about whether to vote for this constable or that constable and that kind of thing. And the farther down the ticket you go, the more you just have a reflexive party line vote.
Yeah, most people already know in CD6 how they're going to vote, and I don't think money's going to matter much, but it is so close that it's worth pumping money into it. And we're talking just 2 or 3 hours after the polls closed on Tuesday, the DCCC National Democratic Group was already putting out a hit piece on Juan Ciscomani, and so they're into it, and we're going to be seeing that for the next couple of months, and it's going to be a heck of a battle.
When it comes to big dollars, we also have that U.S. Senate race. We know there's going to be a ton of money there. Mark Kelly has a big war chest, and Blake Masters with his backers is not going to be hurting for money. So that race, everybody is watching. What does it look like?
Mark Kelly is really just middle of the road as he presents. And so will people just buy the fact that he'll go there and maybe not do too much damage? And meanwhile, Blake Masters is a bull in a china shop and wants to go straighten out Washington and fight for us, as he says. There is going to be a lot of money there, but I think it's going to come down to personality in that race, quite honestly. And Mark Kelly, while he will always vote with the Democrats, he is very palatable. You can take him. He's not blustery, and he's likes to stick to the facts and talk about issues. And I think at this point, people want to talk about issues.
Mark Kelly is, as you say, middle of the road. And 15 years ago, he would have been a moderate Republican and not have very many different stances on top line issues. He does, present as, cool and collected, the astronaut, combat pilot. That's something he definitely purposefully puts out there. That's a complete contrast with how Blake Masters is approaching things, which is, he wants to basically burn it down. As somebody who has praised the political philosophy of the Unabomber is a very different person than Mark Kelly.
But they both have a lot of money. And I will tell you, this is the question I haven't heard asked about Mark Kelly. And I've always wondered in the back of my mind, and that is he pursuing his dream or his wife's dream by serving in the Senate? And I'm not saying he's not doing a good job and he's not committed. He most certainly is, but he wouldn't be in this position if that shooting had not happened all those years ago. So I think that that's an interesting question here. But he's already proven himself. He's had a chance to, and he's done a good job in Congress.
He and Senator Sinema often will do joint press releases and things like that. Does the dissatisfaction arm within the Democratic Party with Sinema, does that weigh him down at all? Does he need to push off of her some during the election, or will people view them as two individuals?
I don't think there's too much in the minds of the general public. People don't see the press releases we get as reporters. The flood of stuff that we have to wade through every day. I don't think there's a deep public perception that Kelly and Sinema are completely aligned. And it's not a case of you're voting for Mark Kelly and you're also voting for Kirsten Sinema. They work together on some issues and put some stuff out. Certainly also things they don't agree on. We see that as well.
All right. Well, thanks both of you for spending some time with us.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
With another election cycle upon us, the Cochise County Democratic and Republican Party headquarters are actively drawing attention to the issues facing residents in the border communities in that county. Summer Halm reports.
In early July, the Cochise County Democratic Party set up a table at an abortion protest following the U.S. Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe v. Wade. Party members helped attendees register to vote and to sign petitions. In mid-July, the Cochise County Republican Committee hosted State Superintendent of Public Instruction candidate Shirley Sapir at their headquarters for a meet and greet. Arizona Public Media reached out multiple times to members of the Cochise County Republican Committee, but they declined to be interviewed. When asked about some of the main issues facing the county, Elizabeth Tyndall, the chairperson of the Cochise County Democratic Party, mentioned that education is at the top of the list.
Making sure that our schools are funded, making sure that our schools have the resources that they need to be able to educate our students is one of the major concerns across the board in our county.
When it comes to school security, amid the uptick of mass shootings across the nation, Tyndall said the party recommends placing more restrictions on purchasing firearms.
Just having red flag laws, having background checks. So when you purchase a weapon, it takes more than just an hour to buy a gun that can take many, many lives in a small amount of time. But we also should make it more difficult for people to get weapons that can rip little children's bodies apart. And I think we forget that part. We forget how brutal and terrible it is, and we get caught up in different narratives, and we forget that there are parents that have lost their children when all they did was send them to school.
Additionally, Tyndall is also putting out a call for more access to mental health services in the county.
I do think that we do have to address mental health in our communities, but I think that we need to do it in a genuine way, not in just paying lip service to it. And here in Cochise County specifically, there is very little access to mental health care. If you were to decide that you wanted to go see a psychologist or a therapist of any type, the chances that you would be able to get an appointment in the next 6 months are very, very low.
Another issue in the spotlight is water. 2 ballot initiatives will appear on the November ballot to give voters the choice of whether or not to make both the Douglas and Wilcox water basins active management areas.
We don't have enough water in our county. We have people that their wells are running dry. And I think just from keeping people in our county and keeping people employed. Both education and water are really two topics that we have to address and that I think are at the top of our list.
Cochise County includes a number of border communities. When it comes to immigration, Tyndall said that a humanitarian approach is best.
I think as a country, we do have a responsibility to offer asylum and protection to people who do need it. Some of the rhetoric is really out of control. We are talking about people's lives, and people don't pick up and leave their home and travel hundreds, thousands of miles for no reason.
According to a report from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the number of encounters between agents and undocumented immigrants along the southwest border has increased by 51.8% this year in comparison to last fiscal year. Tyndall says that the issue is with the system.
One of the talking points was well, people should come to this country legally. They should go through the process legally. And of course, but the process to come here legally is such a tangled web of bureaucracy and time that doesn't work. Because if your family's life is at stake, doing the process of the years and years of years and waiting for the process isn't going to serve your emergency. And so I think finding that middle path and ultimately recognizing the humanity of people. Just remembering that, like, no matter where someone is from or no matter, like, what they're doing, like, they are humans and every person deserves dignity.
Attention for voters and candidates now turns to the general election in November, where control of the U.S. Senate and the Arizona legislature hang in the balance. In Sierra Vista, I'm Summer Hom, Arizona Public Media.
Welcome back to The Buzz. I'm Christopher Conover. This week, we're taking a deeper look at Tuesday's primary election results. Chuck Coughlin is CEO and president of High Ground, a consulting firm that has worked on campaigns for prominent Republicans, including former governors Jan Brewer and Fife Symington and Senator John McCain. In a recent appearance on Arizona Horizon, broadcast on our sister PBS station in Phoenix, KAET, Coughlin called the primary an internal Republican bloodbath.
There was a lot going on all those statewide races, multiple candidates running. Several candidates won with 40% of the vote. On the down ticket side, legislatively, several incumbents lost to election denier candidates across the board. The legislature looks like it's going to be a much more conservative place after last night. Populist, I'd say, populist place. And so the party of Trump ran the table last night.
He said the most watched race on the Republican side was one that's been the most competitive, the race for the gubernatorial nomination between Karen Taylor Robson and Carrie Lake.
Karen spent $20 million roughly making that a very competitive race. We'll see what that wraps up with. And then down ticket, Fincham won. That was not a surprise. Tom Horn won. That was not a surprise. It was appeared that Masters was going to win that Senate seat going away. Legislatively, it ran true to form. In most of the safe Republican districts, a lot of incumbents lost to more extreme populist candidates.
Coughlin also talked about why he didn't see former Attorney General Tom Horn's win over state lawmaker and education advocate Michelle Udall for the Superintendent of Public Instruction nomination as an upset.
Think about how long Tom's been on the ballot, how many times he's been on the ballot on the Republican side. Attorney General, Superintendent of Public Instruction, it's a name that Republicans recognize, and he's got street cred with that very populist side of the party.
He said the landslide victory for Mark Fincham, a far-right election denier who was at the rally that turned into the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol, was also unsurprising.
Again, that's the Republican primary. That's the Republican primary that we're living in today, and they nominated the most extreme election denial candidate, and then that's going to be the ball of wax going into the general election. And I would expect, on that basis alone, that's the Secretary of State's office. That's what that office does.
Yes.
And if you're Adrian Fontes, you're going to run it against a guy who says, I'm not going to certify the election. I'm going to vote to overturn the election. I'm going to vote against early balloting. I mean, there's a whole litany of things. And Adrian is a well-versed candidate. He was the Maricopa County Recorder. I don't know how Mark recovers and runs a successful general election campaign.
And Coughlin said he doesn't think Fincham or many of the populist candidates can pivot to more mainstream stances in the general election. So the state GOP is likely to take a different tactic.
The Republicans are going to tie everybody to Joe Biden, tie everybody to the recession, and tie everybody to the inflationary factor, and try and make that ticket so unappealing that they will get a chance to win. Through negativity, drive turnout down and make them an unattractive choice.
He also said he has concerns about moderate and establishment Republican candidates like Karen Taylor Robson backing populist primary winners.
You have a civil war that took place last night within the Republican Party, and those wounds will not heal easily. It will be up to Karen. I know Karen is a very gracious person. Will she do that? I don't think Bo Lane will on the Secretary of State side. I don't see Bo had a lot of support around the state. And I don't really see Bo doing that because Bo's not an election denier. He's a principled guy, got into the race, said, it wasn't taken, and ran and got, 25% of the vote. If you're Fontes, if you can pull off 25% of Republicans, it's game over.
But Coughlin said Democrats also have their own divisions to overcome.
Both parties, I'll say, have done a really good job of handing your opponents a victory. And so does the progressive side of the Democratic Party show up, its identity-based politics, and run on that narrative? If it does, you make the race competitive. It's the old sports analogy. Who's going to turn over the ball the most? And the team who turns the ball over the most loses.
He said that Senator Mark Kelly's message when going against Blake Masters is the same one that his seatmate, Senator Kyrsten Sinema, has used.
I've not seen Mark as the kind of outgoing, ticket-leading guy. It's clearly an opportunity for him to do that and talk about his role in the U.S. Senate, what they're doing, how he's working with Senator Sinema, and invoking Senator Sinema's name in a general election because her numbers are so very popular with Republicans. We know that's a well-worn path for Democrats to win. Sinema did it in 18. Kelly's done it in 20. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a progressive. I'm an Arizonan. I'm here to solve problems.
The longtime Republican strategist said newcomer Abe Hamadeh has a chance in the Attorney General's race against former Corporation Commissioner Chris Mays.
Chris is a super smart lady, ASU professor down at the Corporation Commission, established the first renewable energy standard, endorsed that initiative a few years ago that went down in flames, that was a renewable mandate initiative. I think they're going to try and attach an anti-carbon narrative to her, which is more costly to consumers, which is more costly to the economy, and try and attach that. If I'm her, though, all I would say is, I'm the state's law enforcement officer. I'm not making policy. I'm enforcing the law.
That was Republican campaign strategist Chuck Coughlin speaking on Arizona Horizon on our sister PBS station in Phoenix, KAET. You can watch the full interview, including answers on similar questions from Democratic strategist Carl Gentles on azpbs.org. Dr. Samara Klar is an associate professor at the University of Arizona's School of Government and Public Policy. Leading up to the primary, she, along with a team of researchers, surveyed 1,000 voters in the state.
That really replicates what we found in 2020 during the presidential election. We did a similar poll of general election voters in 2020, and we found a lot more division amongst Republicans than we did among Democrats, specifically when it came to real sort of hot button issues like immigration. We found a substantial portion of Republicans in 2020 who felt that they were more moderate than the Republican Party. And so we re-asked some of those questions in 2022. And as you indicate, this particular survey was done only of primary voters. So primary voters tend to be more engaged. They tend to be a little more ideological. They're the ones who really want to get involved in choosing the leadership. So you might expect a little more homogeneity amongst the primary voters. But, again, we find quite a bit of division amongst Arizona Republicans. And I think you really see that reflected in the election results. I mean, to see such a neck-and-neck race between Lake and Robson, for example, that reflects some real division among Republican voters. So I'll give you just some examples. Almost a third of Arizona Republicans who participated in the primary say that the state Republican Party is too conservative. And that, of course, is a minority. It's only a third. But to see that among primary voters was pretty striking to us, since one can pretty safely assume that they would be more conservative than the general electorate. Now, Democrats as well show a little bit of that. But what's interesting is Arizona Democrats also say that their own party is too conservative. So regardless of whether you're a Democrat or a Republican in Arizona, there's a substantial portion that view their own party as more conservative than they would like them to be. We don't really see a lot of Democrats or Republicans in Arizona saying that their own party is too liberal. There is a good amount who say, it's fine. We like it the way it is. But I think Republicans need to be attuned to the fact that there is some dissatisfaction with the ideological extremity of many of its candidates.
The other big election that happened this Tuesday night, of course, was in Kansas dealing with abortion rights. So how do abortion rights play here in Arizona as a political issue? It's not on the ballot. The group tried to get it on the ballot. It didn't make it.
Well, his on the ballot indirectly, and that is because since Roe was overturned, abortion's been kicked back to the states, and it's essentially up to the governors to decide what happens to abortion in their states. This means that the gubernatorial race in Arizona is going to become very contentious as a result of abortion. Now, Arizona currently has a ban on abortion. It's one of the states that does not allow abortion, except in mother's life is at risk, pregnancy is not viable, sort of the very worst case scenarios. And we asked in our poll whether or not voters support that ban. Keeping in mind, these are primary voters, we found strong opposition to the abortion ban in Arizona. 60% of Arizonans oppose the ban, 44% strongly oppose the ban, and only 15% say they strongly support it. Now, this doesn't mean that Republicans who oppose the ban will go ahead and vote for a Democrat. They may not necessarily care that much, but it does mean that this is an issue that's really going to help the Democratic side. It's going to help whichever candidate wants to get rid of this ban. And even Doug Ducey initially had been saying that he felt this ban was potentially not the right law for Arizona. So that's going to be a real benefit, I think, for Katie Hobbs in her election. And we'll see how much she brings it up in the election, how salient she wants that to be.
When it comes to something you just mentioned, it may not be enough for Republicans to vote for a Democrat. But if Republicans think their party is too conservative and there is a moderate Democrat or someone they view as a moderate Democrat, can they hold their noses enough to vote for that moderate Democrat because that Democrat, whoever it is more liberal, just to use the term, than they believe, the conservative side of their party is?
Well, we saw a little bit of that in 2020. So, we're looking sort of at real big data here and trying to figure out who's doing what. It looked as though in 2020 there was a substantial portion of the electorate who came out to vote for Mark Kelly and did not vote at all for president. So they vote for Kelly and they abstain from the presidential vote. That's a pretty unusual move. What that would indicate is somebody who is not liberal enough to support Biden, dislikes Trump, but thinks that Mark Kelly was the better option over Martha McSally. And Arizona has a lot of independents. About a third of Arizonans do not want to outwardly identify with either party. A good portion of those independents view themselves as ideologically conservative, but they don't identify with the Republican Party, and they will occasionally vote for a moderate candidate from the other side, or a greater risk to the Republican Party, they just won't vote at all. So if Republicans in Arizona feel that Blake Masters doesn't represent them or feels that Kari Lake doesn't represent them, they may not go out and vote for Kelly or vote for Hobbs. But the risk to the Republicans is that they just say, you know what, I don't want to participate at all. And we do see that. Abstention's a real problem when you're running in these really tight races. And Arizona has just become such a real swing state. I mean, we don't know who's going to win. It could be Democrats, it could be Republicans. And we know that it's going to be a very tight margin of victory no matter who gets it.
You also polled on purchase of assault weapon age, and people might be surprised in Arizona, which is an open carry state and has always had that around, the results you found.
Yeah, so, first we find that Republican primary voters, so I think we can assume these are sort of particularly engaged and probably particularly conservative Republicans in Arizona, not surprisingly, they overwhelmingly believe that you should be able to legally own and purchase an assault weapon. So we don't see a real wave of support for a ban. However, 71% of Arizona's Republican primary voters told us that they believe the legal age to purchase an assault weapon should be raised from 18 to 21. So Republicans in Arizona believe that the Second Amendment protects the right to purchase an assault weapon. They don't want 18-year-old kids doing it. Now, that's a really big piece of news for the Republican Party, because that's something where Republicans and Democrats can find a lot of bipartisan cooperation. Raising the assault weapons age limit from 18 to 21 is a real sort of overwhelmingly popular policy proposal.
All right. Well, thanks for spending some time with us.
Yeah, of course, Chris. Thanks for having me.
That was Dr. Samara Klar, an associate professor at the University of Arizona School of Government and Public Policy. And that's the buzz for this week. Tune in next week as we head back to school and hear from educators as the new school year gets underway. You can find all our episodes online at azpm.org and subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcast. Just search for The Buzz Arizona. We're also on the NPR One app. Zach Ziegler is our producer, Jim Blackwood is our production engineer, and our music is by Enter the Haggis. I'm Christopher Conover. Thanks for listening.
Arizona Public Media's original programming is made possible in part by the Community Service Grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.